People over 60 believe muscle weakness happens because muscles get old. But the real surprise from human biology is this: your muscles don't forget how to work. Your brain forgets how to talk to them clearly. That's why some seniors walk every day yet still struggle to stand from a chair or feel shaky on stairs. The problem isn't always strength, it's communication. And there is one simple chair movement that reopens this brain to muscle connection, often doing more for stability and power than long walks that only repeat the same motion. After the age of 60, what many people describe as muscle loss is not simply the muscle shrinking away on its own, but a gradual weakening of the communication lines between the brain and the muscle fibers it controls. Every movement you make begins as an electrical signal in the brain. That signal travels down the spinal cord, through nerves, and finally reaches muscle fibers, telling them when to contract, how strongly to fire, and how long to stay active. With aging, these signals can become slower, less synchronized, and less efficient. Some nerve cells that once activated muscle fibers may reduce their activity, and the remaining ones must handle a larger workload. The result is not just smaller muscles, but muscles that do not receive a clear, confident message. This is why a person may technically still have muscle tissue, but feel weaker, slower, or less steady than before. The issue is not only the size of the engine, but the quality of the wiring system that runs it. This change is closely linked to what researchers call neuromuscular efficiency. In younger years, when the brain tells a muscle to move, many muscle fibers switch on together in a coordinated pattern. After 60, that coordination can become less precise. Fewer fibers may activate at the same time, and the timing between them may be slightly off. This creates a feeling of effort without the same level of output. A simple task like rising from a chair may feel heavier, not because the legs are incapable, but because the signal telling them to work is weaker and less organized. Over time, if these fibers are not regularly and properly stimulated, the body may reduce its investment in maintaining them, leading to further decline. Another factor is sensory feedback. Movement is not one-way communication. Muscles and joints constantly send information back to the brain about position, pressure, and balance. This feedback helps the brain fine-tune force and stability. With age, this feedback can become less sharp, making the brain less certain about where the body is in space. When the brain feels uncertain about where the body is in space, when the brain feels uncertain, it often responds by limiting power as a protective strategy. It chooses safety over force. This can look like weakness, but it is often caution built into the nervous system. Physical inactivity accelerates this process. When movements become smaller, slower, or less frequent, the brain receives fewer reminders of how to fully activate muscles. Pathways that are not used regularly become less responsive. It is similar to a language you stop speaking. The knowledge is still there, but access becomes harder. Repeated controlled movement helps restore clarity in these pathways by reminding the nervous system how to coordinate effort. Hormonal and circulatory changes also play a role. Reduced blood flow and shifts in hormones that support muscle and nerve health can influence how well signals travel and how quickly tissues recover. Yet the nervous system remains adaptable. Even later in life, consistent mindful movement can strengthen these connections, improving how effectively muscles respond. What appears to be simple weakness often reflects a conversation between brain and body that has grown quieter and less confident rather than completely broken. One of the most overlooked changes after 60 is not in the muscles themselves, but in the body's internal sense of position and stability. A system quietly working in the background every second of your life. This system, often called proprioception, is the body's awareness of where it is in space. It comes from tiny sensory receptors in the muscles, tendons, and joints that constantly send information to the brain. They report how bent your knee is, how much weight is on your foot, and whether your body is leaning slightly forward or backward. In younger years, this system operates with remarkable precision. The brain receives a clear, continuous stream of updates and makes rapid adjustments to keep you steady without conscious effort. You walk, turn, and Reach without thinking about balance because the system is finely tuned. With aging, the sensory clarity can soften. The receptors still function, but their signals may be less sharp and the brain may process them a bit more slowly. Vision and inner ear balance mechanisms may also change, meaning the body relies more heavily on joint and muscle feedback than before. When this information is slightly delayed or less detailed, the brain becomes more cautious. It may tighten muscles, slow movements, or limit stride length as a protective response. This can create stiffness and a sense of instability, even in someone who still has reasonable muscle strength. The person may say, "I feel unsteady," not because they lack power, but because their internal map of the body is less vivid. Balance is not just about strong legs. It is about communication between sensory input and motor output. Imagine standing up from a chair. As you lean forward, receptors in your ankles, knees, hips, and spine inform the brain about shifting angles and pressure. The brain instantly adjusts muscle activity to keep your center of gravity over your base of support. If this feedback is slightly blurred, the brain may overcorrect or undercorrect. That is when a movement can feel wobbly. Over time, the fear of that wobble can lead a person to move less, which further reduces sensory stimulation and deepens the cycle. Joint health also influences this system. Joints that are rarely moved through their full, comfortable range may provide fewer signals to the brain. Gentle, repeated motion nourishes joint tissues and stimulates receptors, keeping the sensory pathways active. When movement becomes limited to very small ranges, the brain receives a narrower picture of what the joint can do. It may then treat the joint as fragile, even if it is structurally sound. This protective response can reduce confidence in balance. The nervous system adapts to the information it receives most often. If the body frequently practices controlled shifts of weight, small changes in direction, and coordinated limb movements, the brain becomes better at interpreting sensory input again. It refines its internal model of the body. This is why slow, deliberate movements can be so powerful. They give the brain time to listen to signals from joints and muscles and to recalibrate responses. Over weeks and months, this can translate into smoother transitions, better posture, and a stronger sense of stability. Foot sensation plays a surprisingly important role. The soles of the feet contain many receptors that inform the brain about the surface beneath you. Changes in skin sensitivity, footwear, or circulation can reduce this feedback. When the brain receives less information from the feet, it may increase muscle tension higher up the body to compensate, which can feel like tightness in the calves, hips, corset, or back. Encouraging healthy foot awareness and gentle weight-bearing movements can help restore this bottom-up communication. Breathing and posture also influence balance. The trunk houses many receptors, and the position of the rib cage and pelvis affects how signals are sent. Upright, relaxed posture allows for more accurate sensory input, while slumped or rigid postures can distort signals. Calm breathing helps regulate the nervous system, reducing unnecessary muscle guiding that can interfere with smooth adjustments. What often looks like simple clumsiness or just getting older is frequently a change in the body's internal sensing network. The encouraging reality is that this network remains adaptable. When given consistent, safe opportunities to explore movement and gentle challenge, the brain can sharpen how it interprets signals from the body. Stability then becomes less about forcing strength and more about restoring a clear conversation and action, allowing movement to feel more natural and secure again. After 60, the body begins to place a higher value on efficiency than on raw output, and this shift quietly changes how muscles are used in everyday life. Many people assume that strength is simply a matter of how big a muscle looks or how hard it can contract in a single effort. But the aging body is more concerned with how economically that muscle can work over time. Muscles are not just engines, they are also energy managers. Every contraction costs fuel, and the body prefers movements that deliver stability and function without excessive strain. When activity becomes less varied, the nervous system may rely on a smaller set of muscle fibers again and again. while others are underused. Over time, this selective use can reduce overall coordination and make movements feel heavier than they truly are. Muscle fibers are controlled by motor units, which are small groups of fibers governed by a single nerve. In youth, the body can recruit these motor units in a highly flexible pattern, bringing in just the right amount of force for the task. With age, some motor units may be lost or become less responsive, and the body adapts by reorganizing how remaining units are used. This is not a failure, it is a form of conservation. The system simplifies to maintain reliability. However, when movement patterns are repetitive or limited, the nervous system may stop practicing fine control, and the range between too little effort and too much effort narrows. A simple action, like rising from a chair, can then feel abrupt or strained because the smooth gradation of muscle activation has faded. Endurance also becomes more important than peak force. Daily life after 60 involves many low to moderate efforts: standing, walking, carrying light objects, maintaining posture. The body prioritizes muscle fibers that are resistant to fatigue, sometimes at the expense of fast, powerful fibers that are used less often. If those faster fibers are not occasionally called into action in a safe and controlled way, the nervous system may reduce its investment in them. This can affect reaction speed and the ability to correct balance quickly. The result is not simply weakness, but a narrower performance window. Blood flow and oxygen delivery play a role as well. Muscles that are gently and regularly activated develop better local circulation. This supports cellular health and efficient energy production. When muscles are inactive for long periods, circulation can become less robust, and even small efforts may feel tiring. The sensation of fatigue can then discourage further movement, creating a loop where reduced activity leads to lower endurance, which leads to even less activity. Connective tissue surrounding muscles also adapt. Tendons and fascia respond to load and movement by maintaining elasticity and strength. Without regular variation in movement, these tissues can become less springy, which changes how force is transmitted. Movements may feel stiffer not because muscles cannot contract, but because the elastic components that assist them are underused. The encouraging aspect is that the neuromuscular system remains highly adaptable throughout life. When the body is exposed to varied, controlled movements that require gentle changes in direction, speed, and effort, the nervous system begins to expand its recruitment patterns again. Muscles learn to share the work more evenly, and coordination improves. Effort then feels more proportional to the task, rather than excessive. What emerges is not just stronger muscles, but a more intelligent distribution of work across the system, allowing everyday actions to feel lighter, steadier, and more sustainable for the years ahead. Balance in later life is often thought of as a simple matter of leg strength, yet it is actually a conversation between the eyes, the inner ear, the joints, and the brain, all speaking at once through a network of nerves that never truly rests. After 60, this conversation can become quieter and slightly slower, not because the body has stopped caring about stability, but because the sensory systems that guide movement have accumulated decades of use. The eyes may need more light to judge distance clearly, the inner ear may send subtler signals about head position, and the receptors in the feet and joints may provide less detailed feedback about the ground. When these signals are softer, the brain has to work harder to interpret them, and balance begins to rely more on conscious effort than automatic reflex. Proprioception, the sense of where the body is in space, plays a central role here. Tiny receptors in muscles, tendons, and joint capsules constantly report information about stretch, pressure, and position. In youth, this stream of information is rich and rapid, allowing the body to make micro-adjustments without awareness. With age, some of these receptors become less sensitive, and nerve conduction can slow slightly. The result is not an immediate loss of balance, but a reduction in the margin for error. Movements that were once corrected instantly may now require a fraction more time, which becomes noticeable on uneven surfaces or during sudden changes in direction. The vestibular system of the inner ear adds another layer. It detects head movement and orientation relative to gravity, helping coordinate eye movements and postural responses. Even small age-related changes here can influence how secure a person feels when turning quickly or looking up and down. If the signals from the inner ear are less precise, the brain may rely more heavily on vision. This is why many older adults feel less stable in dim lighting or visually complex environments. The system has not failed, it has shifted its strategy. Muscles themselves are part of the balance system, not only through strength, but through timing. To prevent a fall, muscles must contract at the right moment, in the right sequence, and with the right intensity. This requires fast communication between sensory input and motor output. When coordination between these elements is practiced less often, reactions can become less refined. A person may still be strong, yet feel unsteady because the sequence of muscle activation is not as well rehearsed. Joint mobility also influences stability. Ankles, hips, and the spine need a certain range of motion to allow the body to make subtle adjustments over the base of support. Stiffness limits these options, forcing the body to use larger, more abrupt corrections that feel less controlled, gentle. Regular movement keeps joint capsules nourished and maintains the elasticity of surrounding tissues, supporting smoother balance responses. Confidence is an often overlooked factor. When someone experiences a moment of instability, the memory of that sensation can lead to guarded movements. The body stiffens in an attempt to be safe, but this stiffness can actually interfere with natural balance reactions. Relaxed, responsive movement allows the body's automatic systems to function more effectively. The hopeful truth is that the balance system remains trainable. When movements are performed that gently challenge stability in a supported and safe way, the brain begins to pay closer attention to sensory input again. Neural pathways involved in posture and coordination become more active, and the integration between vision, vestibular input, and proprioception improves. The body relearns to trust its own signals. Over time, adjustments become more automatic, and standing or moving through space feels less like a task and more like a natural state, with stability arising not from tension, but from a well-practiced harmony among the body's sensory and motor systems. Muscle strength after 60 is often discussed in terms of size, yet the deeper story lies in how muscles are used, nourished, and connected to the nervous system that directs them. Muscle tissue is not only for movement, it is a metabolic organ, a reservoir for glucose, a protector of joints, and a partner to the heart and lungs in sustaining daily life. With aging, muscle fibers naturally become fewer and slightly smaller, a process known as sarcopenia. But this is not a sudden loss, it is gradual, influenced strongly by how often muscles are asked to work against resistance and how well they are supported by circulation and nutrition. Each muscle fiber depends on a steady supply of oxygen and nutrients delivered through tiny blood vessels. Regular contraction acts like a pump, helping circulate blood through the muscle tissue itself. When movement becomes limited, circulation within muscles can decline, and tissues receive weaker signals to maintain themselves. The body follows the principle of efficiency. It preserves what is used and reduces what is not. This is not neglect, but adaptation. When muscles are gently and consistently challenged, the body responds by reinforcing the structures that allow those movements to happen. The nervous system plays a key role here. A muscle contracts only when a motor nerve sends an electrical signal to its fibers. Groups of muscle fibers and the nerve that controls them form motor units. With age, some motor units are lost, but the body has an impressive ability to reorganize. Surviving nerves can branch out and re-innervate fibers that lost their original connection. This helps maintain function, but these larger motor units may be less precise. Movements can feel less smooth or slightly weaker, not because the muscle cannot work, but because the communication pattern has changed. Gentle resistance-based movement encourages more efficient recruitment of these motor units. The brain refines how it sends signals, improving coordination and strength without the need for heavy loads. This is especially important in seated or supported exercises, where safety allows focus on controlled contraction rather than fear of falling. Slow, deliberate movements give the nervous system time to map the action clearly, strengthening the connection between intention and response. Muscle health also interacts closely with metabolism. After meals, muscles help absorb glucose from the bloodstream under the influence of insulin. When muscle mass and activity decline, the system becomes less efficient, and blood sugar regulation can be affected. Regular muscle engagement improves insulin sensitivity, supporting steadier energy levels. In this way, strength work is not separate from metabolic health. It is deeply intertwined. Joints benefit as well. Strong muscles absorb and distribute forces that would otherwise stress ligaments and cartilage. When muscles weaken, joints may feel less stable, leading to discomfort or cautious movement patterns that further reduce activity. By strengthening the muscles around hips, knees, and ankles, the body regains a sense of support, allowing movement with more confidence and less strain. Hormonal signaling is influenced by muscle activity too. Contraction releases myokines, chemical messengers that communicate with other organs, including the brain. These signals are associated with improved mood, cognitive support, and reduced inflammation. Thus, when muscles are engaged, the benefits extend beyond the limbs to the entire system. Recovery becomes more important with age. Muscles still adapt, but they may require slightly more time and consistent nourishment, including adequate protein and hydration. Rest is not the opposite of progress. It is part of the cycle that allows tissue repair and strengthening. The encouraging reality is that muscle tissue remains responsive throughout life. Even in later decades, meaningful improvements in strength and function are possible when movement is regular, progressive, and aligned with the body's capacity. Strength is not only about lifting, it is about maintaining the ability to stand, reach, rise from a chair, and carry out daily tasks with ease. When muscles are engaged with awareness and care, they continue to serve as reliable partners in mobility, stability, and overall vitality, supporting independence and resilience in the years when they matter most.